Shalom. Welcome to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio today by my normal co-host, Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines. And we're also joined by Des Moines' new shaliach from Israel, Safnat Mor. For those of you who don't know, a shaliach is somebody who helps kind of bring connection between Israel and the United States and shares things about Israel. I'll let Safnat explain more when we get to talk to her in a few minutes. Big issue going on, obviously, today is the crisis in Egypt with the military using force to oust pro-Muslim Brotherhood demonstrators from several locations around Egypt with many hundreds of casualties. There's a wide variance in the number of casualties being reported, with the Muslim Brotherhood having a much higher figure than the military. But regardless, even the military's figure is several hundred, and we know that the violence is very bad. We also know that in addition to the violence being done by the military in its interactions with the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, has also been using violence against the military, there have been numerous Christian communities around Egypt that have been attacked by the Muslim Brotherhood, churches that have been burned down, and any number of other attacks on Christian businesses and neighborhoods. In part, this is opportunistic, that these conflicts have been going on for a very long time, and when anger rises up against the government, it is not unusual for Muslim Brotherhood and other radicals to take out their anger on Christian communities in Egypt. This is part of why, as a matter of fact, the Christian groups were more aligned with Mubarak than they were with the Muslim Brotherhood when they came into power, simply because their lives and their security were dependent on the government defending them against the Muslim Brotherhood. So this is something to be expected. Things in Syria continue to deteriorate. The situation there is not very good. We're now seeing actually attacks by Muslim groups, Sunni groups, against Hezbollah, with a Hezbollah stronghold being attacked. The Alawite Assad group is still holding on to power, and things are very chaotic there, with many refugees still in Jordan, more pouring over the border every day, many injured, and there really is not a whole lot of good, accurate reporting as to what the situation is there day to day. I'm sure intelligence services have more information than we have, but there's not much new information coming out. Other than obvious stories of misery that have come across the internet from various places. There is also the beginning of the peace process between, or the renewed peace process between the Israelis and Palestinians, and much of the information concerning that process is being held under close wraps. It's evidently the case that one of the stipulations in the peace process is that the only person who's going to be talking about the peace process and how it's going is Secretary of State John Kerry himself, with the belief that neither party's commentary will be very helpful, because the difficulty of the situation is not necessarily one that should be reported, because it will not help. And if things start moving forward, the report of any concessions made by any side will almost certainly stir opposition in both in the homeland of the person involved. So the situation that we have in dealing with the world today is very difficult. We're going to talk about all of these things in much more detail after our short break. Once again, we're joined by Safnat Mor, the new shaliach from Israel that's working for the Des Moines Jewish Federation, and also by Mark Finkelstein, our Jewish Community Relations Director here in Des Moines. I'd like to thank, before I forget to do so, Dr. Ronald Bergman and Bergman Folkers Cosmetic Surgery and Spa for their support of this show and enabling us to share with all those around the world this news and being able to bring understanding about the world to the world. That is The World in 5 Minutes. We'll see you after a momentary break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Shalom, welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, and I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein and Safnat Moore. And as Safnat pointed out, shalicha is the correct term for what she is, not shaliach. I was thinking it was an official title, but shalicha is the feminine form of the word, and it's obviously more appropriate for Safnat. But Mark, can you explain a little bit about what a shalicha does and introduce Safnat to us?
Sure. Many communities around the United States, Jewish communities, have an opportunity to bring, especially young people from Israel, to come invest a little Israeli culture, some Hebrew language, and understanding of the country into their own communities, and to share that with various parts of their local community. We're very pleased to have Safnat Moore come join us for the year. And Safnat, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, first, happy to be here. Just arrived 2 days ago. I live on a kibbutz. It's called Kibbutz Israel, which is similar to Israel, but it spells different and the meaning is different. It's in the north, in the valley area. And I spent 3 summers at a Jewish summer camp in Texas and worked a bit with the reform movement in Israel. And I got an offer to come and try out for 1 year of shlichut. And I said, sure, why not? It's something that I had in mind already. And I said, well, give it a try. And it worked out pretty well. And I'm here.
Safnat, how did you prepare for this particular position?
Okay, so we had 2.5 weeks of training course in Israel, in Jerusalem, with all most of the shlichim that going to be around the world, most of the shlichim going to be in North America, the United States and Canada. Some are around my age, some more older with families. Some are what we call Hillel shlichim, so that means they work in the universities and colleges. Some are movements shlichim, working with youth movements around the world. It's more common actually around the world than in the United States. And pretty much they explain us about the process and what it means to be a shaliach, shlicha, what it's like to work with a Jewish community and their needs, and to expose them to Israel, and basically just to strengthen the connection with Israel to the community.
Now, we understand you'll be working a lot with the children of especially the Jewish community in the community school. Do you have some ideas how you'll be interacting with the kids?
Well, like you mentioned, I'm going to be working with the kids, mainly teaching them Hebrew, starting from preschool, and the youth kids from 7th to 12th grades, and maybe an option of even the older community, the older people in the community, of teaching them Hebrew as well. And also I'm going to be in charge of the camps that we running around the year, and just be myself, I guess.
Now, could you tell us a little bit about where you're from in Israel?
Okay, yeah, sure. So my kibbutz, like I said, it's in the north, but not very north. It's in the valley area. It's in the Israel Valley, which is a huge valley, but more specific in Harod Valley, in the Gilboa area. The whole story about Saul and Jonathan, that area, and it's an average kibbutz, like 500, 600 people. Our main industry is pool cleaners, robots, which were very successful. And of course, we have agriculture and like cows and almonds and olives and all kind of agricultural, like we grow tomatoes and peas and wheat and stuff like that.
Your parents then lived on the kibbutz for many years?
Yeah, well, pretty much since I got to Israel. My dad is actually an American. He did Aliyah when he was 18 from Philadelphia. His whole family is still in Philadelphia. He did Aliyah. He started the army and became a lonely soldier. It's a term because he didn't have his family in Israel. And he got to the kibbutz he had adopted family in Israel, and he got to the kibbutz. And my mom is from Rhodesia, which is no longer exists. It's nowadays we know it as Zimbabwe in Africa. And she came to Israel as part of Habonim Dror movement, youth movement, Ulpan. And she came to the kibbutz with the Ulpan, and that's where they both met, the early 70s, and since then they're in the kibbutz.
What are some of your future goals, do you think?
Here or?
No, when you go back.
Well, I'm really interested of working with youth and educational work, something that I found out in the recent years that I'm really into it, and be more than happy to do it when I'm finished here.
So, Safnat, we were talking a little bit about the prisoner release earlier, and I was mentioning that there were some pretty heated reactions. I noted particularly Ayelet Shaked's response from Jewish Home Party on the political right wing, but I had also mentioned that there were reactions across the political spectrum. Can you talk a little bit about that and your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a very delicate situation, and like you mentioned, it caused bold reactions from both sides of the political map. Some people say it's we shouldn't release so many prisoners and basically we don't get anything except from a promise that maybe something will happen at the peace talk. And some say we should release more. Like I said, it's a very delicate situation, and we over the years we brought them back prisoners. Did it work? I don't really know.
Now, we all hope for peace. Do you think this latest round of negotiations has a chance of attaining something significant?
It's hard to say because, well, from the Palestinian point of view and the side, like the Hamas say that Abu Mazen has no right basically to negotiate with us, and because they are still fighting for power within the Hamas and the Fatah. And so they have their issues. They strongly against the peace talks. And again, in Israel, it depends who you ask. It depends if you're a right-winger or a left-winger. If you're a right-winger, then they say probably nothing's going to happen. And if you're a left-winger, they'll say, okay, maybe this time. But it's hard to say, especially at the beginning, and we'll see. I don't really know. We will all want to say that there will be peace. I think we are very far from it.
The chief Israeli peace negotiator is Tzipi Livni.
Yep. What
do you know about her?
Well, her father was a very right-winger in a political view. She was at the Likud party, but after the depart of Ariel Sharon, she moved to the left. I'm not really agree with her opinions, but that's just my point of view of the situation. I don't know what she's gonna do with the peace talk. Like we talked before, that most of the details are behind closed doors, so no one really knows what's happening there.
Do you think it's a good idea to have a woman as the chief negotiator? What does that do within the context of negotiations, do you think?
Well, I think it's good. It shows people that Israel is an open country, and well, we all know where Israel is a democratic country, but it also shows that women can hold key points and key positions in the government and hold talks and be in charge of that huge process.
The peace process, I think, is really difficult for Americans to understand. And in fact, I think Israeli politics in general are difficult for Americans to understand. You've had experience working at U.S. camps and also with high school students going to Israel on the NIFTY IE program. Can you talk a little bit about what misunderstandings that American teenagers come with, and what kind of questions you deal with, and what you're most surprised by their lack of understanding, or by what they do understand?
Well, first we need to remember that the government system in Israel is very, very different than the States. We don't have two parties and they just battle between them for the presidency. First of all, we have a prime minister, and we have a lot of parties from all over the political map view, and we have Arabs that sit in the Knesset, which is like the Congress, and we have ultra-Orthodox people and light Orthodox and religious people, secular women, pretty much everyone from the society in Israel. And it's very hard to control as a prime minister, because you don't only have your party. Within the government, you need to take in consideration, when you come to a decision, all the parties that are part of the coalition. And it's not easy, because even if it's on the same side, they still, everyone's trying to pull for their direction. So I think we should remember that when it comes to talk about Israeli politics, that it's not just one man and his whole party behind him. Mm-hmm. What am I surprised about it? I think I'm I'm not surprised, but it's always nice to see how like the youth, the American youth that I worked with, want to know and looking for to understand better the situation in Israel in terms of the dispute that's been going on between Israelis and the Palestinian. And I think it's great for them that they can develop their own opinion about the situation, especially after they come to Israel and experience, whether it's 4 months, a year, 6 weeks over the summer, they get to see the stuff that's been going on in the country from their own eyes. And I think it's a great opportunity for them to be a bit more understanding. And when they come back to the States, they have more knowledge. So when they talk about it, they don't just say, oh, it's just because this and that. They can actually come and give the details and not just throwing numbers, because I think it doesn't mean anything.
Now, we've been talking about some of the conflict in Israel, but there are many beautiful things. And would you encourage people to visit?
Oh, yes, definitely. I think it's always easy to show the bad sides in every country. But Israel is a beautiful country. You can go from the northern part of Israel to the southern part of Israel in a day and see many, many different sites, from snow in the north to the heat and warm in the Red Sea in Eilat, climb mountains, and it's a very historical place. A lot of historical things happen, the Bible stories. Almost everywhere you go, it's connected in some way. And it's if you're interested, it's nice to really understand where you're going. A lot of archaeological sites, and it's a great country.
What are some of your favorite places in Israel?
Well, I'm a kibbutz girl. I'm not a fan of cities, but I do love my area and the northern part, like the Galilee and the Golan Heights. I think it's a very beautiful part of the land, and it's also, I love hiking there. There's a lot to see there, and a lot of history.
You got to Sippori? You got to Sippori?
Yes,
I dug at Sippori for two summers. One of my favorite places. What do you think is most impactful on young adults when they come to Israel first? You know, we talk about Birthright Israel and all of these things. On all of these trips, what do you think is the most impactful thing for the young adults to see or do when they come, or things, if there's more than one?
I think first of all is meeting with young Israelis. As you know, in Israel, when we turn 18, we go to the army. We don't go to college first. And I think it's a very interesting interact with them for the kids in America, to see people their age, what they're doing when they're studying in college, and to hear from us, from them, how we see it, the life in Israel, and what it means for us, and what it means to be in the army and to serve the country. I think I would say that probably the main thing that affects them.
We have a relationship in our community with Partnership Together, which has a relationship with the Western Galilee. First of all, have you been in the Western Galilee?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you know anything about the partnership?
Yes. Well, like you mentioned, it's in the Western Galilee and Akko, which is it's a combined city. They have Jews and Arabs living there. There's a lot of programs going on with the Jewish Agency and 12 communities around the Midwest. And get closer with the kids in Israel and the kids here in the States. They showed us of a joint Hanukkah party they did with few kindergartens here, and then they Skyped it to Israel. They have a really nice and unique program in the Arab section, but they're helping the kids there. They get them a sponsorship and make sure that they're on, like helping them throughout the day and school. And it's really interesting to see it, because normally you don't think of the Jewish agencies supporting stuff in the Arab community. And I think from what I see, it's a very warm and a very strong relationship between the Western Galilee Partnership and here.
Do you know anything about Mate Asher and the type of communities in there?
Yeah, well, Mate Asher is it's a regional council, and there's a few kibbutzim there, and small settlements, small countryside places. And I know they love volleyball there. They have a really good volleyball team.
Do you know anything about the Akko Festival?
A bit, yeah. I know it's like a big thing in Israel.
Yes.
There's like a lot of arts performances going on there every year. It's a big, big thing. I know. I've never been, but I know it's a big thing.
What type of music do you like personally?
Well, I do like classic rock.
Okay.
Like the oldies.
Okay.
And Israeli music. And I do.
What are the oldies in classic rock and Israeli music?
Well, I love listening to The Doors and Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Eric Clapton, Rolling Stones, all the things I got from my older brothers and sisters.
Right. Do you have any favorite
Janis Joplin.
Israeli singers?
Yes.
Who are some of them?
Well, Arik Einstein and Shalom Chanoch, Ehud Banai. It's hard to say on the top of my head.
Okay. Hopefully you'll share some of that with us
I
while
will.
you're
I'll
here.
be happy to. Idan Reichel, I'm sure you'll heard of him.
Right.
So we were talking a little bit about Egypt earlier, and Egypt is kind of the top of the news at this point with the crisis there. And there's also ongoing crises in Syria, and there's the discussion of nuclear weapons in Iran. And I think people tend to wonder how Israelis keep their sanity at all dealing with this kind of. I mean, if we were talking about nuclear weapons, being threatened to the United States coming out of Mexico, and I mean, it's insane, I think, for Americans. And so, can you comment a little bit about that? How do Israelis go about daily life with these kind of things going on? Rockets falling in a lot, and all these different things.
Well, Israel is a kind of a crazy place. A lot of things going on. Like, there's almost not a dull moment. I think, I don't want to say we got used to the things that's been going on, because it's going on for years. It got quiet and then it got started all over again. I think it depends where you live, obviously, because if you live closer to the Syrian border, then it might affect you more than if you live in the central Israel. The part with the rockets, it's been going on for years. It didn't start yesterday, and it won't stop tomorrow, unfortunately. Luckily, we have the Iron Dome, so it's proven to be working. So it helps the civilians that lives in those area, in Eilat area, in the Gaza Strip area, around Beersheba, to be more relaxed, because they know someone is protecting them. And I don't know, you just live with it. That's the situation. I think as long as it's staying in their border, it's not coming to us, then we're okay now. Because once it got started to move towards us, then maybe people will start be more.
What's the best outcome of the crisis that you can imagine?
Talking about Egypt.
And I'm talking about the Israeli-Palestinian crisis.
Oh, okay.
What's the best outcome that you would like to imagine?
I think to almost what everyone think, that to reach an agreement.
What would that look like?
I think it's going towards two-state solution, but it's, like I said, it's very far from now. It will take it's not gonna you don't snap your fingers and it's over. It's not magic, and it's gonna be taking a lot of hard work put into it. And I mean, people think it will be over if we just sit and talk, but it's complicated than that. It's not, because each side wants something that the other side is not willing to give. So.
Now, how close is your kibbutz to the West Bank?
Well, the Sumerian area starts not far from my kibbutz. It's called. It starts in Jenin, which is not very far from my kibbutz.
That's not very far. We have to give Americans context here. What
well,
qualifies?
Not very far is like
We're talking
maybe
about
30 minutes. I mean, from my kibbutz to Elad is like maybe 6-7 hours. That's like 6 hours. Yeah.
How far is your kibbutz from Haifa?
From Haifa, it's around 45 minutes.
Okay.
If you could say anything to the Palestinian people, what would you say to them?
What would I say? Wow, it's a hard question. I think from what I see and understand, they're very set on what they want. And sometimes also the Israeli side and just in general in life, when we want something, we go like straight ahead and not willing to listen and to see what the other side has to offer. And I would say just to keep an open mind, and maybe there's another option you didn't think that could come in, like a better idea in helping towards the solution.
We're going to go ahead and take a short break here. You've been watching Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and Mark Finkelstein, and our special guest, Safnat Mor, the new Shalicha to Des Moines Jewish Federation. And we will see you in just a couple of minutes.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
My name is Justin Bennett with Strong Tower Consulting, where we passionately coach individuals, families, and businesses to make better financial decisions that help create success and eliminate financial stress. I offer a free 30-minute consultation where we find out where your situation is. I explain how I do my coaching services. Then it's up to you whether you want to continue. The Bible has, depending on who you believe, 800 to 2,000 scriptures that talk about money alone. So pretty important subject in God's eyes. That's one of the things that I enjoy doing, is help them see God's ways of handling money. You know, it's interesting. Most people that I ask, what would it be like to be debt-free? The common response is, I don't know. I don't think it's possible. But in 90 days, most of my clients go from, I don't think it's possible, to, I'm excited. In 2 years or less, I will be debt-free. There's no tricks, no gimmicks, nothing being sold here. It's just learning how to do money well. This is Strong Tower Financial Hour, where we help people go from being broke and scared to having hope with a plan.
I'm Michael Libby. I'm the host of Insight on Business, the News Hour. We're seen live at 8:45 each Monday morning at Webcast One Live, or whenever you want on my blog or on the internet. So what qualifies me to talk about advertising, marketing, and consumer trends? Well, it's my business. Insight Advertising, Marketing, and Communications has helped dozens of companies, small, medium, and large, learn how to use advertising correctly. And we pass that information on to you each and every week.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. there's an app for that.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Federation and also by Tzafnat Moore of the Jewish Federation. She's our new shlicha to Des Moines from Israel. And we're talking a little bit about different issues going on in the world and the Israeli perspective. One of the things that happened in Israel recently was the Maccabia Games. And we'll let Tzafnat talk a little bit about what that was like.
Okay. This Games of Maccabia was the 19th Games. Held it in, most of the games were held in Jerusalem, but it was spread around the country in the central area, Netanya, Tel Aviv. All kind of different sports. They had juniors, open and masters, and also for like Paralympics, competitions. And it was from July 18th until July 30th. And it was great. It's a great opportunity to come for and see, and for the Jews all over the world to come to Israel and compete and get to know loads of young Jews or older Jews and to see Israel.
And what's your favorite sports? What are your favorite sports that you got to see at the
Well,
Maccabi Games?
I'm a huge rugby fan. We have a rugby team on the kibbutz, and my sister, she's a rugby physiotherapist. She's a sports physiotherapist, but she worked with the Australian rugby team at Maccabia, and I got to meet them. Very nice guys, very funny, good players, and it all happened actually during the training course. So I wasn't able to see the games until the semifinal, but I had a lot of fun. It was a huge crowd coming, around like 2,000 people, which is a lot for a Maccabia event. And the final was between Israel and Australia, who won the previous Maccabia. And for Israel, it was the biggest achievement so far on Maccabia Games. We won. We took the gold. For me, it was a bit of bittersweet because I was happy, of course, that we won, that Israel won, but I was a bit disappointed for my sister and her teammates for losing. But like they mentioned, said, if we lost, at least we lost to Israel. Yeah, and it was a great experience and great watching the games and the environment and see all the people come in and join the game and friends and all that.
So I'm sure it's a lot of fun, and it helps kind of direct attention away from all the tension going on in the broader world. I try to explain to people in this country when they talk about how things feel in Israel. I said, we know more or feel often more afraid about what's going on than the Israelis do. When you're in Israel, you have a completely different perspective on a lot of these things. I think I felt safer in Israel than I did when I got back from Israel and I was looking at the news about what was going on in Israel. But with the situation in the countries around Israel, what are your thoughts on what's going on in Egypt right now and what the best situation would be as far as from your perspective as an Israeli, the solution in Egypt?
Well, it's very unstable right now in Egypt because after they sort of banished Mubarak from his position, you can say, of Egypt for many, many years, the Muslim Brotherhood took over, and they are more extremers, and they're not very fond of Israel. And now they tried to do a lot of things that the Egyptian didn't really like, and the army decided that that's it. We're going to take over, and we're going to change again the president. The president. And I'm sure we all heard what's been going on right now. There's a lot of killing going on there, chaos took over the streets, and in Israel, I think the situation is that, as we see it, it's not something that, oh, this one is better for us, or no, that guy. Because I think in every guy that will come up will continue in some way of that line that they started already. So it's hard to say which one is like we in favor, because like they say about the Syria situation that we support the rebels, but the rebels are also terrorists and Al-Qaeda members, and no one can promise that if someone will take over Assad, it will be better for Israel. So you can never know what's gonna happen. It's like you're sitting on an explosive bomb, and it's can go off any minute.
You will see as you spend more time in this country that lots of people will make the argument that we're doing this policy for Israel or that policy for Israel, and we know that this is not true. The reality is these situations are so complicated in dealing with Egypt or dealing with Syria that it's not necessarily about Israel. Doesn't necessarily like either outcome. The question is which outcome the United States likes. I just spent a couple days in Washington listening to various political leaders and commentators, and the general point of view was that for Syria, as bad as the other alternatives would be, if there's any way we can get Assad out of power and weaken Iran, that's our best option. I'm less enthusiastic about that approach than I think some other people were, because I am more afraid that things are going to deteriorate and all of a sudden this weaponry is going to come in the hands of people who are going to use it against Israel or the United States. In Egypt, it seems to be the case that Israel and al-Sisi, the military leader right now, are working together, at least to some extent, where the Egyptians reported to the Israelis that there was a terrorist attack about to take place. The Israelis sent a drone attack and killed the people who were probably affiliated with al-Qaeda, from what I understand. And in fact, the rocket fire that came into Eilat Monday came as a response from Al-Qaeda against Israel in response to that very strike, from what's understood here, at least the understanding that I get. The concern that I see put forward, and Mark, maybe you have some thoughts on this too, is that the perception in the region is that the United States doesn't want to take sides, and they're watching. And one of my rabbinic colleagues this morning, Rabbi Michael Borden, with whom I co-founded We Are for Israel, he wrote an article called "The World is Watching," that President Obama has a pattern of saying the world is watching, dealing with the Iranian elections, dealing with the Syrian civil war, dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood and the military in Egypt, and that another commentator, a friend of mine who spoke the other day at an event I was at, said that the one person who cannot be a passive observer to the crises around the world is the President of the United States. The President of the United States always has to take a position. And so there's a question of what's going on here. People don't really understand what the United States policy is, and what the United States wants to see as happen in any of these events. We seem to be standing on the fence that we can't stand on. What do you think, Mark?
I think the argument can be made that American foreign policy wants a stabilization of the situation rather than a quick remedy one way or the other. And as we saw in the initial dealing with Egypt, the United States was behind in trying to force Mubarak out, and then was on the side of forcing Mubarak out. So I don't know whether the complexity of the issue keeps changing and therefore affects American foreign policy, or that American foreign policy is not defined enough to take into consideration the possible outcomes. David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, it seems to me that American foreign policy is in a situation in which we're trying not to put ourselves in a lose-lose situation. And by doing that, in some cases, we're almost guaranteeing a lose situation.
Well, if indeed the President of the United States keeps saying the world is watching and nothing happens as a consequence of catching the bad guys doing bad things, that ultimately erodes the power of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, the United States, one of the ways you influence policy is by people thinking you're going to engage. If no one believes the United States is going to engage in situations around the world, you definitely embolden people to do actions that they know the United States is not going to agree with.
And this then has implications with regard to Iran.
Everywhere. Iran, Egypt, Syria, North Korea, you name it. If they know we're not going to engage, or if they feel that the United States is so war weary that there's no chance the United States is going to engage, then you run the risk of having really bad things happen. What happened? I was responding to somebody this morning about World War II, and I noted that in the 1930s and early 1940s, before World War II, FDR was talking about the fact that 90% of the U.S. debt was accumulated war debt and preparing for war and all of these things. And the United States wanted to do anything other than invest in foreign policy and defense. Well, what that led to was we didn't stop Hitler in the 1930s. We didn't stop Germany in the 1930s. We didn't even engage when Hitler invaded Poland. We waited way too long. And the result was, instead of spending a small amount of money and risking a smaller number of soldiers, we ended up with millions of people dead and massive amount of debt. Foreign policy is the way that you prevent these things from happening.
I think is a growing concern that the American foreign policy with regard to Iran, as articulated by the president, is clearly the administration will not allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. If indeed that's at all in doubt, that's going to be very bad, because then the policy shifts to containment. Now may be the time for the American administration to say clearly again the same thing, that it will not allow Iran to obtain weaponry.
Right now, the belief is that no matter what the United States says, the policy that's developing is one of containment. Well, that's pretty much there does not seem to be any belief whatsoever that there's even a realistic threat of military action. And this is one of the biggest problems. I mean, from the people that I spoke to in Washington. In fact, there's a lack of being able to trust U.S. policy, not necessarily the leaders, but that the policy won't change. In Egypt, for example, you've got neither the Egyptian military currently in charge of the country nor the Muslim Brotherhood, is the opposition of the country, can trust the United States to maintain whatever policy that it puts forward. And this is, if you're dealing with the Iranians, do the Iranians believe that the United States is actually going to do something in order to stop them from getting nuclear weapons?
Well, let
are they going to push off new direction?
Another hard question. Do you think that most Israelis believe that the United States will live up to its promise to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons?
I don't know. It's like you said, I think the United States eventually, when they decided to do something in the area, it's because it fits their policy and what they see that they can profit from it. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like they'll do much, but it depends on how much the Iranian will play on that side. Like, they'll try to stretch the American reaction to see how far they can go and how far the American will let them go, I think.
David often explains the situation is that the time frame is different between Israel and the United States, but that the United States, you may want to reiterate this, elongated the time frame so that Israel did not have to take action last September.
Yeah, the United States, as I understand it, provided Israel with weaponry that they could use. It gave them more capability. In fact, recently as well, with refueling and other things, as I understand it. The discussion that I'm hearing is that the red line for Israel is at hand or even is passed. And that the red line for what the United States wants to do is very close too. I mean, that preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is going to be very difficult if action is not taken immediately.
Well, this will then pressure the Israelis to make their own decision.
But the other thing that needs to be said, and I heard this from multiple people, is that the only nation that can really prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon in the long term is Iran. And this is the biggest problem, that we can do a number of different things to retard the development of nuclear weapons. We can bomb various facilities and put off the acquiring of nuclear weapons for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even 3 years, depending on how much damage we do. But in the long term, what Iran's going to do is rebuild those facilities and re-engage their program. And so the only way to really, in the long term, have an impact would be to encourage the Iranian government to back away from doing it. Now, how do you do that? One of the answers is massive increase in sanctions until they stop. And the other one is to encourage regime change in Iran. And obviously, we don't want to do regime change in Iran like we did in Afghanistan or in Iraq. I mean, we don't want to engage with troops there by any means. But there have to be ways that we can get the population itself to stand up for a more friendly policy. We've failed in the past to stand up and help those whose views are beneficial to the United States, who are in line philosophically with the United States, and to help them put forward their views.
Tzafnat, the last Israeli election did not turn on war issues. Lapid was elected because Lapid was popular because why?
Well, like you mentioned, I think for the first time since many years, a lot of people voted not based on security reasons. They still did, but they had other things in mind, like social situation that's been going on in Israel. They thought maybe Yair Lapid could bring that change. But like I said again, the government situation in Israel, the government system is very hard. And you can't just come into the government and think you're going to change everything within a day. You have to take in consideration you have other parties and not all of them agree with what you want to do. And it's he took a very hard job on him to be the treasurer. He had to deal with a very hard budget, and people say now it's like, what happened to your promises? But once you get to the government and you see the situation, you think different than you not in the government, and you handle the situation differently than you might thought you do before. So I think people should keep that in mind, that it's not a change can come, but it's not an easy change and it will take time, and people gonna suffer and gonna hurt other people by cutting and hard decisions.
Right.
But you have to start it somewhere, some point.
What happened to the Labor Party?
What happened? Well, they thought they're gonna be more. They gotta get more people, and they will be more strong, and maybe even be a could be the Prime Minister, Shelley Yachimowicz, the head of the Labour Party. But I think, again, they lost a lot of their voters in the recent years. A lot of people say that nowadays it's not the same Labour Party, and for sure not the Labour Party that David Ben-Gurion meant for it to be. They did better on the recent election than the previous one, but because they don't go for security reasons, they just go on the social side, and they think that their social side is what we should do, but also in their social views, they have flaws, and it also hurts other people. And it's in terms of getting to like kind of an equal point between people will get hurt, but we want to get to a better place, and we need to start at some point, at some stage, the change. You have to be patient.
And this is one of the real difficulties in dealing with the peace process is obviously that this is a very difficult situation, not only dealing with the Israeli government, but dealing with the situation in the Palestinian Authority. And one of the reasons that the process is set up at the moment so that there's no information leaking out is because we're in a situation in which the coalition in Israel could be dramatically affected by any decisions that happen in the peace process. The government of Mahmoud Abbas, the same thing in the Palestinian Authority. And when we discussed at the meetings that I was at the last couple of days in Washington, the peace process, what was said is that there's not a whole lot of hope for a major solution, for an agreement that's going to encompass everything, every single issue: borders, security, refugees, Jerusalem, and recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. But there is some hope that maybe we can get some progress on some of those issues, and that the countries, that the peoples who are basically working together right now and are at a state of peace. And when you look at around the region and you realize that we're counting the number of casualties in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the tens over the course of months, compared to hundreds in Egypt, thousands in Syria, hundreds in Lebanon, and you're dealing with a situation with the countries that are at peace around Israel are having fewer casualties in their conflicts than Israel and the Palestinians have, and that the economy in both the West Bank and in Israel is doing really well, and even in Gaza it's doing pretty well. You're dealing with a situation in which there's a great deal of risk for everybody involved, and the gains are going to be incremental over a long period of time. The idea that an agreement is going to encompass all of these things and is going to be done in 9 months is almost insane from the viewpoint of the commentators that I've dealt with. Is it possible? Yes. Is it possible that there's going to be some new agreements that are going to come out of the discussions that are going on now that are going to improve the lives of Israelis and Palestinians? There's more optimism dealing with that than there is that any kind of a final agreement will come out of the negotiations. In the meantime, everybody involved is very concerned on what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Egypt, what's happening in Iran, and also what's going on in Jordan. As Michael Oren has said, Israel's security border is not the Jordanian-Israeli border, it's the Jordanian-Iraqi border and the Jordanian-Syria border. Israel has been working with the Jordanian government also to help them prop up what they're doing. So as we talk about what's going on, and I'm sure we will next week and in the weeks to come, we will be dealing much more with the peace process. We'll be dealing much more with what's going on in Egypt and Syria and Iran and Jordan and any number of these other countries. It's been wonderful to have Safnat Mor join us, our Des Moines Jewish Federation's new Israel Shlicha, and we hope to perhaps have her on future shows as we talk about more issues dealing with Israel. And also my thanks go to Mark Finkelstein for joining us in the studio today. And our thanks go to Dr. Ronald Bergman and Bergman Folkers Cosmetic Surgery and Spa for his support of the show. Thank you for watching Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman.